kind of quiet. He always had the words to speak at the time they needed to be spoken and in the right way so that I could understand it. And I've observed and I've noticed that he does that. He's very open-minded. He's very caring. You know, he doesn't allow so much, you know, like he doesn't allow his past experiences to be the set, like formulated opinion about things. He gets to know individuals. You know, he understands, and it is a privilege and an honor to have him speak and hear his story tonight, and I'm excited. I'm introducing Mr. Todd. If you come up, please.
Hello, my name is Todd. I am an addict alcoholic.
Hi,
Sobriety
Todd.
date is February 14th, 2018. Congratulations to everybody that got chips. That's a big deal. I remember when I got my first 30-day chip, and I never thought I would ever get a 30-day chip. I thought I was one of those unfortunate ones, you know. So congratulations on getting the chips. Don't get too upset when 12 months hit and you gotta wait 6 months for another one, because after 6 months after that, you gotta wait a year for another one after that. So it's like, why can't they have a 78-month chip? All right. I use both terms because I used many drugs. Alcohol was the one constant in my life. The companion I thought would never let me down. So I believed. I was born in Georgia to a military family, and my childhood was overshadowed by abuse, physical, mental, and sexual. At times, it felt as if I had a sign on my forehead that said "abuse me." That sign seemed to give anyone permission to hurt me. It wasn't until my recovery that I realized these people were predators, able to spot the misery in my life and take advantage of it. My father made his own alcohol in the basement, so that by the time I was 9, I had already started drinking. I didn't realize it then, but I was desperately trying to escape my reality. At 12, I tried drugs for the first time. I loved the way that weed made everything disappear, especially when it was chased down with a few bottles of Boone's Farm Country Quencher, if anybody can remember that. I remember lying by a creek, staring up at the sky, thinking this is it. The freest I had ever felt. In that moment, I was certain I had found the secret to happiness. But that feeling never came again. It became a ghost, always out of reach, hiding in the next drink or the next high. I remember being 14 years old, standing in an elevator with 2 other people, probably in their mid-20s. They were passing around a little brown bottle and they were taking hits out of it, and I asked them what it was, and they said it was cocaine. They asked me if I ever tried it. I said no, but I definitely asked to try some anyway. And they gave me 2. They didn't at first. I talked them into it, right? But it wasn't the happiness that I had been chasing, but what a night. I was partying with the adults, leaving my childhood behind for good. On my 15th birthday, I was arrested in Indiana. 2 weeks later, I got arrested again in Kentucky. And I never really understood the weight of what I was doing. The Kentucky arrest is the one that made me figure out I'm not a very good criminal. I needed to change things, but not realizing that I never realized that drugs, it was just a part of my life, right? I sold, I trafficked, I used, all through the years of my addiction, somehow avoiding serious time, except for countless public intoxication charges. Then came Sherry. We got married, we had 3 children, and for a while, life settled into something close to calm. But my drinking led to mistakes after mistake. Sherry was my entire world, and more than once, I tried to end my life just to tell her that I loved her. There's another part to that. It's in the wrong place. But anyway, okay. Progress, not perfection, right? So she knew I couldn't drink. She helped me stay off the bottle, but drugs were different. No smell, no obvious signs. So crank became my new escape. Over 41 years, I've been addicted to nearly everything under the sun, still chasing that first feeling of happiness. Cocaine first, I would do anything, and I did anything for that drug. Then alcohol with crank. When I got out of control, I quit in one day, right? But I had a handful of cocaine in my hand. Easy to quit crank in a day. So I went straight from crank to coke. When it got out of control again, I quit that in one day. Then the mushrooms, whiskey, and weed kicked in for a while. Whiskey got out of control, so again, I quit that in one day, which proved to me that I was not an alcoholic or an addict, okay? Simple as that, right? On 9/11, I was in some seedy motel in southern Alabama, had a crack pipe to my mouth when I watched that plane hit the towers. I had no emotional attachment to how many people died. It wasn't until I got sober that I felt that emotion of what that day really was. So it's a long time later too. But I believe that since I quit all those things in one day, I was not an alcoholic or an addict. I was that guy that would tell you, mind you, I was probably high and drunk at the time, that I quit in one day, why can't you? You're just weak. You know, that was me. I believe God gave me an addiction to heroin just to show me what addiction really was. You cannot quit opiates in one day. I don't care what you have in your hand, you're not going to do it. So now I knew what was true alcoholism about me and addiction about me. I can live with the fact that I was an addict alcoholic. So no more opiates for me. I'm not that stupid. But hey, my buddy picked me up out of detox, medical detox from opiates, and we did cocaine in his car, knowing that, you know, I'm not an idiot, you know, I'm not going to go back and do heroin, but I do some coke, right? Soon I found meth, and everybody knows when you start doing meth, that's about all you do. It's about it. At 26, my whole world, this backtracks a little bit, at 26, my whole world shattered. Sherry died tragically, leaving me with 3 kids to raise on my own. The grief was unbearable. I tried again and again to follow her just for that one last chance to say I love you. Her parents, God bless them, stepped in when I couldn't, and the truth is, there were plenty of times that I couldn't. There was no one left to tell me no, even if they wanted to. The wheels had come completely off. My kids had probably more stepmoms or called stepmoms than I can really remember. I was never sober, not even close. I met my current wife in 2000. We've been together ever since, though it's been far from easy. There's a lot of breakups. She even filed for divorce at one point. We were both alcoholics, so we quickly fell in love. Our passion was deep, whether it was doing something we liked or fighting. We were at that all the time. If you can imagine fighting and arguing as you run out of beer, and you look at each other and you say, time out, got to get more beer. So we go to the store and get more beer, we get back and it's back on again, right? Until we run out of beer again. It's funny how you can do that. So yeah, I don't know, yeah. And that happened a lot. And she got sober 3 years before I did. Okay. On January 25th, 2018, I decided I was done. My kids were grown, and it felt like my wife didn't want me anymore, so I tried to end it again. It didn't work. I ended up in Morro Ridge. A week later, I was back in their parking lot, smoking meth, still convinced that my time was up. On February 14th, 2018, I was arrested in Comal County. I stayed there until I got transferred to Bexar County. And yes, it is Valentine's Day, the day I got sober. My arrest date is my sobriety date. So that's all I wrote that I'm going to read, because, you know, in my recovery, that's easy. I was told that I needed to write more about my story to kind of be more connected. But when I got out of jail, my daughter invited me out to her place for a barbecue. And anybody that's been in Bexar County knows, if you just get out of Bexar County and somebody says barbecue, you're on it, man. So I was on it, right? And this guy with a beard come walking up to me and he said, he said he wanted to talk to me about making some changes. And so I had no problem admitting I'm an addict alcoholic. I'm okay with that, right? But then that question, do you have any mental health issues, comes up. I'm like, nope, I'm a grown-ass man. I make my own way, right? And he said, you know, he laughed a little and he said, I beg to differ. You know, your daughter told me you tried to commit suicide a while back. You don't think that might be a little mental? And I'm like, nope, I'm a grown-ass man. I knew exactly what I was doing. He laughed again and said, well, if you knew exactly what you were doing, you wouldn't be here. That made me laugh a little, but what that did was that opened up the door. I was willing to admit maybe I'm a little bit mental, right? And so I agreed to go to treatment, and my daughter and her husband took me to treatment. I went to ITP at Haven for Hope. And on the way, she told me, she said, Dad, make me a promise. And I generally don't break promises to my daughter. And I said, okay, what is it? She said, promise me you'll be honest. Still fasting today, right? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I'll be honest, right? She looked me dead in the eye and she said, no, Dad, with yourself. And that's a hard one for any of us to do. The easiest person that we can lie to is ourselves. but I made that promise. And good thing that I did, because long story short, all the people that had sexually abused me were dead. Nobody knew about it. I didn't have to say a word, right? But it would have been in here. And if I'd have left it in there, sure, I might have got sober, but at some point it would come back and get me, okay? So when they say you gotta let everything out, that is a fact. Do you have to let it out to one person? No, I didn't. I had a great sponsor. He said, well, I wanna know some, and some I don't wanna know. Some you're gonna go over here, some you're gonna go over there. So I had quite a few people that I gave out parts of all this misery that was inside of me. And I ended up getting evaluated with 7 different diagnoses. So I guess I was kind of batshit crazy, didn't even know it, right? But I didn't want to take doctors' drugs. I take street drugs. I don't want no doctor drug. And that went on with 2 doctors. And the second doctor, she kind of got mad at me and she stuck her finger in my face, and that was a mistake. I'm like, and she said, oh, that's bipolar right there. I said, no, man, that's me pissed off. So she gave me another doctor, and that third doctor showed me a graph. And he asked me, he said, are all your diagnoses on that graph? And I'm like, yeah, they are. And he flipped it, and it was PTSD. And he said, what does that line say? And it said that if I had more than 4 of those diagnoses, I had complex PTSD. And he explained to me that he could give me medication for the entirety of my life if I wanted to treat those symptoms. But if I really wanted to get to the root of the problem, I would work on that PTSD. And hopefully some of those symptoms would alleviate, because they are all symptoms of PTSD. So it took me 3.5 years, weekly counseling sessions. I asked my counselor every time I went for 2 years, we were trying to find a day in my childhood that I didn't get abused, right? And I just couldn't find it. And finally she said, well, Todd, what are you gonna do if there's not one? And I said, well, if there's not one, I guess there's not one. She said, well, I don't think there is one. And did you know at that moment in time, I stopped obsessing over trying to find that day. It was just, it is what it is, right? So I go through all of that just to tell you that, all those symptoms do not apply to me today. If I were evaluated, none of them would apply. And it's all because of that PTSD. So I go into the jail and I talk to people all the time about making changes. And I had a woman ask me in the jail, she said, asked me to describe PTSD to her. I'm like, I don't know, and I'm a God guy, 100% God guy. So I said, I thought to myself, God, give me something, right? And I told her, I said, it's like I had these monitors, all this bullshit in my head, and it's always there. All my pain, all my trouble, it's there. But when I get high or drunk, boom, it slides just a little bit. It's still there, right? But I can talk to you, I can move through life, I can deal with you, I can make it, right? When I'm not high or drunk, it tended to come back and get busy. She looked at me and she said, that's exactly right. So now when I describe that, I can tell by people's faces who knows what I'm talking about, right? And especially in the jail. So it allows me, it's another tool that I can help people with if I can identify that. But I did all that work with the PTSD. I don't believe that if I hadn't gone to treatment, I know I wouldn't be sober. If I hadn't worked on my mental health, I know I wouldn't be sober. I had to do them both at the same time. I'm grateful that I did. And I encourage everybody, because it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. If you're an addict alcoholic, you're gonna be a little depressed. You're gonna have some anxiety and throw in a little bit of paranoia, right? That's just what we do. That's it. There's no way that you can be there and not have something going on. I'm not a doctor, so I don't diagnose. But anyway, so I did all those things. I got out of treatment and I went into sober living after that. The night I went into treatment, I got my divorce papers and I read those. And so when I got into Pay It Forward, my wife and I, we kind of, I would go over there and see her a little bit and everything. And we ended up not divorcing. We're still together today, which is great. My family, I have members of my family that were heroin addicts. And there's that saying that what the father does, the family follows. And I'm like, no, I'm not that guy. I'm not going to be responsible for what my kids do, right? Well, today my entire family's sober. I think some of my kids still smoke weed, but that's not my battle. They're not sticking needles in their arms, right? And so I never told them to stop. I never said you had to change. I just did my recovery. And it just seems like my whole family kind of fell in line with that. And I say that because my kids wouldn't talk to me anymore. I couldn't see my grandkids if I wanted to. Everything was destroyed in my life, but everything seems to have come back. And I don't say these things to brag. I say these things because it can be that way for everybody. It may take longer, maybe shorter, you never know, right? got a job. I love my job. I work in a program called Jail Outreach, and I get to go into the jail and talk to people about making changes and getting sober. And it's amazing to see that growth, right? They see them from the day they're in jail to the day they're housed successfully in the community and they're living life. It's no greater feeling in the world for me. But I do say that, that cannot be my recovery. That is my vocation. That's what I do for a job. It is not my recovery, although it helps a lot. I will say, there's benefits to it, right? But anyway, so I say all these things, and I let God lead me in every day. The third step prayer is the cornerstone of my recovery. There not a morning goes by that I do not say that, because Todd's will is not a good place to be for me. I have to be in God's will. And if I'm not, then things go sideways. Usually by, 8 o'clock in the morning. I know I didn't do it. I'm like, okay, this ain't good. I just tried to jump in front of that train. But anyway, yeah, so and it's very quick. And we learn in our recovery that this thing up here, or some of people learn, but this thing is not our friend. It will lie to you every single day. It doesn't want you sober. It wants you giving it the drugs or the alcohol that made it feel better. It wants to feel good. It doesn't want to be sober. So it's going to tell you all kinds of things that aren't true. It's going to tell you you can't. I knew when I got in treatment that I was the unfortunate one. I could not stay sober. There was no way this program was going to work for me. And somebody just told me to stick and stay. And I did. And lo and behold, I can. And I was one that really truly believed I couldn't, okay, because of this. And I've been sober a little over 7 years. This still is not my friend. It never will be. I believe it's a human condition. I don't care if you're in our rooms or not. I believe everybody in the world has this brain that doesn't like them very much because it wants them to do things, whatever, social media, food, cursing, anger. There's all kinds of things out there that stimulate the brain. And so when the brain tells you you can't do something, it's lying to you, because you can. I don't care what it is. If you decide you want to do it, you can do it. My measure of things is when I go towards something that I want to do, there'll be a roadblock up there or something, and when I'm going toward that, if that roadblock falls, I know it's God's will. If it's there and I get close enough that I got to try to knock it down, that is not God's will for me. I recently got on the board of a place called A Recovery Place, and doing so, I started a group years ago called Opportunity Recovery Group, and COVID kind of shut it down, so I started it back up. My sister and I have made that into a nonprofit. We're an official 501c3. Going home one day, I looked over because ARP's location's not a really good location right now. And I saw this place and I thought, oh, that's too small. God said, well, call anyway, right? So I did. And the guy said, oh, we can open up the back a little. So I thought, okay, we'll take a look at it, right? It was 3 times bigger than I saw. It's huge. We negotiated a good deal. So now they get to move, ARP gets to move to a location that's great. Meetings are going to be there. And then my Opportunity Recovery Group is also going to be there. And that is something that I never in a million years dreamed I would be a part of. Okay? Never. I mean, no. I never thought I'd ever have a license again, to be honest. I went to get my license and I found out I had a couple warrants in Bexar County, a couple warrants in San Antonio. I had to clean up before they give me my license. So I go to the county, the lady asked me, she said, how many warrants you got? I said, I only got a few. And she said I had 13 warrants in Bexar County. But I was prepared to go to jail if I had to, because I'm in my recovery. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So if that's where God wants me to be, that's where I'll be. She asked me how I pled to him, and I told her, I said, well, I plead guilty because I don't remember all that. And she asked me why. So I was able to tell her what it was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And she told me, she said, well, I'm going to clear these for you, and you only got to pay $5 when you walk out the door. One condition. And I thought, okay, what's that one condition? I had to go straight to the magistrate and turn myself in. But I planned on going to the magistrate anyway because I had city warrants, so that was my next stop anyway. So I told her I'd go, and I got in there, and they weren't quite as nice. Yeah, I think that everybody does this. I walked in there, and she said, "How many warrants?" I said, "Well, I got a few." And she said, "Sir, you have 11." And I said, "Okay." She asked me how I plead. I said the same thing I said to the county, but she wasn't. And she said, "How much can you afford to pay today?" And I thought about how much money I thought. I said, "Okay." So I told her what I could pay. I'll take this lesson to the bank now. She added $100 to it. Said, if you can pay that, I'll clear all these for you. So I'm out there, Luckily, I'm sober, so I have a credit card or two. You know, I have a little money here, and I'm out there scraping everything together, and I had exactly almost $100 more than I told her. So when they ask you, tell them $200 less than what you got, because they're going to add $100 to it, right? They're going to do that because they know everybody can come up with $100. So take 200 off that number. But you know, I want everybody to know that this is the greatest life. If you have any kind of misery like I had misery, if your life was anything like my life was, this is so much better than I could have ever dreamed. And getting to be with y'all, you know, nothing greater in the world. I was listening to her when she had read how it works up here. The first time that I read that was in ITP. My daughter, all my kids are in their 30s, and they were all just around 30 years old, a little older when I got sober. And I read that, and that's the first time I'm gonna cry. That's the first time in her entire life that she ever saw me sober, was at that meeting. You know, so it doesn't matter how far you think you've gone. It doesn't matter how bad you think it is. It's not. It can get better. And God does not make mistakes. Every day of your life was given to you. Your history, your stories, your past. That's your tools. That's what you got. That's how you relate to people. That's how you take this and give it away. You cannot keep this. You have to give it away. You have to help others. If you don't, okay, maybe you can do it without it. There's so many different paths to recovery. I don't know, and I'm not going to judge. You know, so there's some people that can go strictly to church and they're great. You know, people can go here and everything seems to work well. That's not my story. I need these 12 steps. I need that third step every day of my life. I need AA. I need the rooms. I need all the rooms. But that's my story. So every one of y'all have a different story, a different path. And you're traveling that path. Enjoy your own path. Don't judge your neighbor's path. And don't ever look at somebody and say you have to do it exactly like I did it, because it doesn't work like that, right? I mean, I get some people, they'll get a sponsor and they'll tell me something, send me a sponsor. I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. You know, he's not your boss. He's not a cop. He's not gonna, no, it doesn't work. You have to have your own path. Choose your path. And plant your seeds and water them well, you know, because this is a great, great place to be. I could tell you so much more about what happened to me when I got sober. You know, I became a chapel host, and I'm a guy that doesn't like people, right? I really don't like people, I thought, right? And my recovery coach came up and she slapped papers in front of me. She said, fill that out. I said, what is it? She said, it's an application to be a stipend host for the chapel host. And I'm like, okay. She walked away, you know. I wasn't about to fill that application out. So about a week later, she came back, she slapped papers down. And I figured they already give that position to somebody else, so maybe I'll be in laundry or something. And I said, what is it? She said, application to be a chapel host. And I said, okay, I'll fill it out. Well, she sat down and she said, no, you'll do it right now. And I did. So I became a chapel host. She saw something in me that I did not see in myself. Come to find out, I really like people. Come to find out, I noticed when I did that people seemed to be in a better mood when they walked out than when they walked in. And I like that. I like being able to help people have a brighter day, right? But that's how I figured out that it's not that I didn't like people, it was that I didn't want you to get my stuff. That was an addict thought. That was an alcoholic thought. People just want to take our stuff, you know? And so I didn't like people, but come to find out I did. So a lot of those beliefs you had before are going to change. They're not going to be the same. Let them change, you know? I have a sister that to this day still won't talk to me. As far as she's concerned, I'm disowned, and it'll probably be that way till she's dead. I can't do anything about that. You know, I can't change her, and I can't tell her, hey, you have to accept me because I'm sober, because she doesn't. They don't have to accept us. They don't have to, you know. And the one thing, I was talking to Al-Anon the other night, and I told them, they were asking about me and addiction and some of the things, you know, the alcoholism and stuff. And I said, what I find to be true is when that individual tells you, I promise this is the last time, it is not the last time. It's when you don't hear that. So when you find yourself not saying that, that means that's a good thing. You know, you don't have to ever make that promise again. You don't have to, because you're not going to use, you're not going to drink. So if you're not going to do it, you don't have to promise, hey, I won't do it anymore. And you don't have to tell people you have to accept me for who I am. They don't. You know, they don't, but they will. Most of them, you know. kids come back, I can pick up my grandkids now. They don't even ask me where I'm going. They throw them at me. Get out of here. I have 2 great grandchildren now. Can you imagine on January 25th, 2018, if I'd have been successful at my suicide attempt, what that would have done to my family? I would have given permission to all my children, all my grandchildren, all my great-grandchildren. It's okay to kill yourself. I never thought about them. Never crossed my mind. But that's what I would have done. So I have this thing, you can be a ripple of a nice pleasant wave or a crashing hurricane, which one do you want to be, right? Well, by me not being successful, by me doing what I'm doing, my family has completely changed. I know I've already said that once, and I might say it again. But anyway, I get to be that refreshing wave for my family. I get to be that leader that I never thought was possible. I get to be a man I never thought was possible. One thing you can do is if you're here, right, and you're in treatment, and you got to a bad place to get here, right? So you're basically broke down to nothing, right? So it's your choice who you are. It's your choice what you fill it with. You can fill it with character. You can fill it with being on time. You can fill it with being honest. Because if you're anything like I was, you're an empty vessel, and you'll only be what you fill it with. Why not fill it with great things? Why not be the person you've always looked up to? Why not be that? Why not make that change and say, you know what? That's what I want to be. Because today, I'll be there on time. I'll show up. If you need me, I'll be there. If I can, I'll do the best that I can, right? And I don't tell you things that I can't do. I don't make promises I can't keep. I only do what I can do, and that's the man that I built. But I had to be broken first. I couldn't have done it if I wasn't broke. I couldn't have done it if I didn't admit to myself that everything and anything that I was before sobriety didn't exist anymore. I was an empty vessel, and I'm very grateful to God that He filled it the way that He did it. I say I use a lot of I statements, but it was really God. And it's God that gets me through every day. I definitely am humbled by the fact that He uses me in the way that He does. Do I deserve it? No. Things I've done, places I've been, no. But that's okay. Because God put me through every single day of my life. For one, He knew I would survive. But 2, He knew I had to have this experience. I had to know all these things. I had to know about suicide. I had to know about every drug there was, because He knew what I was going to be doing down the road. I didn't, but He did. So don't think about your past. I have a little pin trick that I teach people that I do with them. Basically, you drop the pin, right? And I tell them, pick that pin back up without moving a single part of your body. Pick that pin back up, and you can't ask anybody for help. You can't do it. So when they realize they can't do it, it's like that pin is your past. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you're not changing your past. It could have happened a minute ago, and you cannot change it. It is impossible to change it. So don't stress about it. Don't get stuck in the shoulda, coulda, woulda, because it don't matter. There's nothing you can do. All you can do is what you do next. And my coping skill in treatment, and still is to this day, is to do the next right thing. You make a coping skill like that, and all those other coping skills you got to use them, because you can't do the next right thing without using them. So that's my coping skill. That's my mechanism that I adhere to, and I guess that's really all I got for y'all. I hope that I hope to continue to see y'all, and let's go out there when we're all ready. Don't go back to where you were. You get out of treatment, don't go back to where you were. And some people have family that I go home. Well, I didn't go straight home. I went somewhere for sober living for a while. I waited. So don't go back to where you were. Don't hang with the people you hung with. Because if you go back to where you were, you're doing exactly that. You're going back to where you were. And back to where you were is what led you here. So, yeah. Make those changes. Pick your friends. Stick with the winners. There's a lot of them. Look at the winners and say, that's what I want to be. Even if you don't believe you can do it. I didn't believe I could do it. I just looked and, man, I want that. My very first meeting I went to, the guy said he had 7 years sobriety, and I wasn't supposed to share. I was supposed to listen, right? But I raised my hand up. I said, dude, you're so full of crap. I didn't use the word crap. I said, you're so full of it. You're going to go home and drink a beer, put your feet up, and you're going to laugh about all of us coming here and listening to what you're having to say. Thought I started an argument. Man, I'm ready to go, right? And he looked at me. You know what he said? Keep coming back. about that casual, and I'm like, he's one of my best friends today. But yeah, so sobriety's real, and it is something that you can live for the rest of your life. You don't have to go back out there ever again. You don't have to wake up in a bathtub in New Orleans going, oh, what the hell's wrong with me? I drank too much. No, I was in freaking DTs, man. You know, luckily the bars never closed in New Orleans. That's what I thought. I'm here about to die in a bathtub, and the only thing I thought of, bars never close. I can make it if I can just get out of this tub, right? I don't ever have to do that again. You know, I get the flu. I know it's truly the flu. It's not that other kind of sickness, right? Yeah. So a lot of people know how to find me. Anybody needs anything, if I can help anybody in any way, I will do the best that I can to help you. Okay? That's what my life's about. That's all my life is about. That's it, period. Nothing else. I know y'all can't make your lives all about that, but that's what I chose to do. So if y'all need anything, you look me up. I will try to help you, okay? And I guess now that's all I got.